Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Dead Sea Scrolls' secret, why the most important biblical discovery was hidden from the world for 40 years. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd boy named Mohammed edh-Dhib, searching for a lost goat near Khirbet Qumran on the northwest shore of the Dead Sea, tossed a stone into a cave and heard, instead of the expected clatter of rocks, the sound of breaking pottery. Inside the cave, he found large clay jars containing ancient leather scrolls wrapped in linen. These were the first of what would be discovered over the next decade to be approximately 900 manuscripts concealed in 11 caves near Qumran, manuscripts that represent the largest collection of ancient biblical and Jewish texts ever found, dating from approximately 200 BCE to 70 CE. They include the oldest known manuscripts of nearly every book of the Hebrew Bible, previously unknown texts from the period between the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, and the rule books of a Jewish sect that some researchers have connected to early Christianity. The Dead Sea Scrolls are the most important manuscript discovery in the history of biblical scholarship, and for nearly 40 years after their discovery, most of them were not published. A small team of scholars, the international team appointed by the Jordanian government and the École Biblique in Jerusalem, controlled access to the unpublished scrolls and published them with excruciating slowness. By 1991, more than 40 years after the discovery, approximately 75% of the scrolls were still unpublished and unavailable to the wider scholarly community. The scholars who controlled the scrolls defended their monopoly vigorously, refusing to allow other researchers access to photographs and threatening legal action against anyone who attempted to publish from unauthorized copies. The secrecy sparked conspiracy theories that the scrolls contained evidence threatening to Christian or Jewish orthodoxy, that they were being suppressed because they revealed inconvenient truths about the origins of Christianity. In 1991, the publication embargo finally collapsed, not through official channels, but through a series of unauthorized publications. The Huntington Library in California, which possessed a complete set of photographs of all the scrolls, announced it would make them freely available to any researcher. The Hebrew Union College published a concordance that allowed the texts to be reconstructed. The full text of one major unpublished scroll was published from a microfilm copy obtained by a New York Times journalist. The monopoly was broken, the scrolls were published, and the controversy they had contained, it was not about Christianity being false or the Bible being a fraud. It was about something both more mundane and, in its own way, equally interesting. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we go further, if you are finding this investigation compelling, please take a moment right now to like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who loves a good historical mystery. If you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. If you found us through Facebook, tap follow on our page. It takes just a few seconds, and it genuinely helps us keep making these documentaries. Now, let us get back to the investigation. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The 20th and 21st centuries were supposed to be the age of answers. Science had decoded DNA, split the atom, put humans on the moon, and mapped the genome. By the logic of accelerating discovery, every mystery should be converging toward explanation. And yet the ledger of genuinely unexplained phenomena, events witnessed by credible observers, investigated by serious researchers, and still lacking a satisfying account, has not shrunk. If anything, it has grown. Part of this is a failure of classification. Phenomena that do not fit established categories tend to be dismissed rather than investigated, filed under anecdotal or mass hysteria, and removed from serious consideration. This is not always wrong. Genuine hoaxes and misperceptions account for a large portion of anomalous reports. But the dismissal is sometimes premature, and the cost is real. Cases that might have yielded genuine insight are closed before they are fully examined. Witnesses are discredited. Evidence is lost. The question is never properly asked. The cases that endure, that survive rigorous scrutiny, and still refuse to yield to conventional explanation, are a small but significant set. They share certain characteristics: multiple independent witnesses, physical evidence consistent with witness testimony, and a complete absence of any plausible prosaic explanation that accounts for all the data. These are not ghost stories. They are open problems in empirical science, waiting for someone with the right tools and the intellectual courage to take them seriously. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Dead Sea Scrolls secret, why the most important biblical discovery was hidden from the world for 40 years, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Dead Sea Scrolls discovery began in early 1947 and expanded through systematic archaeological surveys from 1949 to 1956. A total of 11 caves yielded manuscripts, with Cave 4, discovered 1952, containing approximately 15,000 fragments representing approximately 550 manuscripts, the largest single cache. The manuscripts were found in varying states of preservation. Some scrolls from Cave 1 were in excellent condition, rolled and stored in sealed jars. The Cave 4 fragments were in thousands of small pieces, many stuck together, requiring painstaking unrolling and conservation. The physical conservation of the manuscripts was a major challenge throughout the study period. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the scroll's contents fall into three main categories. Approximately 1/3 are biblical texts, manuscripts of books of the Hebrew Bible, mostly in Hebrew, with some in Aramaic and Greek. These biblical manuscripts are between 1,000 and 1,200 years older than the previously known oldest complete Hebrew Bible manuscripts, the Masoretic texts, dating to approximately 1000 CE. Their discovery allowed scholars to compare the textual tradition and found that, with some differences, the biblical text had been transmitted with remarkable accuracy over a millennium. The Great Isaiah Scroll 1Q Issa, found in Cave 1 and containing the complete book of Isaiah, predates the previously known oldest Isaiah manuscript by about 1,000 years. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. The second major category of Qumran texts consists of previously unknown Jewish texts from the Second Temple period, approximately 500 BCE to 70 CE, texts that were not included in either the Hebrew Bible or the New Testament, that circulated among Jewish communities of the period. These include the Book of Enoch, partially, the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Tobit, Psalms not in the canonical Psalter, and dozens of texts with no known parallels. These documents have transformed scholars' understanding of the diversity of Jewish thought and practice in the period that gave birth to both Christianity and Rabbinic Judaism. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the third category consists of texts specific to the Qumran community itself, its rules, its biblical commentaries, pesharim, its liturgical texts, and its theological positions. The Community Rule 1QS describes an extremely rigorous communal life of shared property, ritual purity, and hierarchical organization. The War Scroll 1QM describes an apocalyptic final battle between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. The Copper Scroll 3Q15, the only scroll made of metal, contains a list of 64 locations where enormous quantities of gold, silver, and ritual vessels are allegedly hidden, a treasure map whose decipherment has generated decades of searching. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Copper Scroll 3Q15, found in Cave 3 in 1952, is the most enigmatic document in the Dead Sea Scrolls collection. Made of copper rather than leather or papyrus, it lists 64 locations around the Judean desert and the Temple Mount, where hidden caches of gold, silver, and sacred objects are allegedly buried, with estimated total quantities that far exceed any known historical deposit. Scroll has been interpreted as a real treasure map referring to actual temple treasures hidden before the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE, an inventory of imaginary or legendary treasures with religious or ceremonial significance, or a coded document whose real meaning has not been decoded. Multiple searches for the listed treasures have been conducted without success. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the scholarly monopoly that delayed publication was partly the result of the Jordanian government's control of the scrolls. Jordan controlled the West Bank, including Qumran, from 1948 to 1967, which allowed the École Biblique, a French Dominican institution in Jerusalem, to dominate the international team. After Israel's capture of the West Bank in 1967, the Israel Antiquities Authority inherited the situation, but maintained the existing international team arrangement rather than forcing publication. The team's principal justification for the monopoly was the complexity of the scholarly work required to produce adequate editions, which was genuine, but which also served to protect career interests of team members who controlled publication rights. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation, and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Dead Sea Scrolls' secret. why the most important biblical discovery was hidden from the world for 40 years. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the Qumran Essene theory, the majority scholarly position, holds that the Qumran community was a sectarian Jewish group identified with or closely related to the Essenes, a Jewish movement described by the ancient writers Philo, Josephus, and Pliny the Elder as living communally in the desert near the Dead Sea. The correspondence between the community rules descriptions and Josephus's description of Essene communal life is close enough to suggest either identification or at least close relationship. Under this theory, the scrolls are the library of a desert community that lived at Qumran from approximately 150 BCE to 68 CE, when it was destroyed by Roman forces during the Jewish War. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the Jerusalem library theory, proposed by Norman Galb and some other scholars, holds that the Dead Sea Scrolls are not the library of a Qumran community, but a portion of the Jerusalem Temple. The library, or multiple Jewish libraries, that was hidden in the desert caves for safekeeping during the Roman siege of Jerusalem in 66-70 CE. Under this model, the diversity of texts and textual perspectives found in the scrolls, which do not all reflect a single sectarian viewpoint, reflects their origin in a diverse urban library rather than the library of a single sect. The Qumran site itself, under this theory, may have been a military outpost rather than a sectarian community. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the crypto-Christian theory, the most sensational interpretation, and the one that drove conspiracy theories about publication suppression, proposes that the Qumran community was proto-Christian or para-Christian, that it was a movement so closely related to early Christianity that studying the scrolls would reveal embarrassing parallels between Jesus and the Qumran teacher of righteousness. Between Pauline theology and Qumran thought. This theory, associated with scholars like Robert Eisenman, who argued the teacher of righteousness was James, the brother of Jesus, is rejected by mainstream scholarship but has generated many popular books. The suppression of the scrolls was alleged by conspiracy theorists to be motivated by the desire to prevent these comparisons from being made. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Dead Sea Scrolls' secret, why the most important biblical discovery was hidden from the world for 40 years, does not rest on speculatio. And alone, what distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the scrolls themselves, now all published in the Discoveries in the Judean Desert series, 40 volumes, Oxford University Press, 1955-2010, and available online through the Leon Levy Dead Sea Scrolls Digital Library, constitute the primary evidence. The archaeological context of the Qumran site, excavated by Roland de Vaux and Jordanian colleagues in 1951-1956, provides information about the community that produced or collected the library. The site shows evidence of a communal settlement with a scriptorium, writing room, communal facilities, ritual baths, mikvaot, and a cemetery with approximately 200 burials. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented the convergence between the community rules description of sectarian practice and Josephus's description of the essenes, including shared property, ritual purity requirements, initiatory stages of membership, and communal meals, provides strong circumstantial evidence for the Qumran Essene identification. Pliny the Elder's specific description of an Essene community on the west shore of the Dead Sea, above Ein Gedi, corresponds precisely to the geographic location of Qumran. This triple corroboration, scrolls, Josephus, Pliny, is considered sufficient by most scholars to establish the Essene identification as highly probable. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the accelerator mass spectrometry, AMS radiocarbon dating of 14 scrolls, conducted between 1990 and 1994, confirmed dates in the range from the 2nd century BCE to the 1st century CE, consistent with the paleographic handwriting style dates estimated by scholars. The radiocarbon dates provided independent chronological confirmation that the scrolls were genuinely ancient rather than medieval forgeries, a question that had been raised seriously by some scholars. The dates firmly place the scrolls in the late Second Temple period, making them contemporaneous with or earlier than the composition of the New Testament. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Dead Sea Scrolls' secret, why the most important biblical discovery was hidden from the world for 40 years. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Dead Sea Scrolls are now fully published and accessible online through the Israel Antiquities Authority's digitization project, which has made high-resolution images of virtually all scroll fragments available to any researcher with internet access. This open-access approach represents a complete reversal of the 40-year monopoly and has dramatically democratized Dead Sea Scrolls scholarship. Advanced imaging techniques, including multispectral imaging, have revealed previously illegible text on damaged fragments, and ongoing DNA analysis of the scroll's parchment has been used to match fragments from different caves that came from the same animals, providing new insights into how the library was organized and distributed. The academic significance of the Dead Sea Scrolls for understanding both Second Temple Judaism and the origins of Christianity has been fully absorbed into mainstream biblical scholarship. The scrolls confirmed the general accuracy of the Masoretic biblical text, revealed the diversity of Jewish theology in the period before the destruction of the temple, provided important parallels, though not identity, with early Christian thought, and demonstrated that the binary categories of Judaism and Christianity as distinct religions were products of later centuries rather than the 1st century CE. The Qumran teacher of righteousness and Jesus of Nazareth were roughly contemporaneous figures in the same turbulent landscape of Second Temple Jewish sectarianism, not identical, but products of the same world. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Dead Sea Scrolls' secret, why the most important biblical discovery was hidden from the world for 40 years, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Dead Sea Scrolls ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please help us reach more people. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. If you are watching on Facebook, tap the follow button on our page to stay connected. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.